I'm Dr. Craig Escude, the host of IDD Health Matters, a podcast where we talk about health, wellness, and health equity for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Hope you enjoy it. So welcome to this episode of IDD Health Matters. You know that we usually come to you on location, but today we have the pleasure of talking with Dr. Harold Reitman, and he's coming to us from, well, I'll let him tell you. I'm coming to you from North Carolina at my home here. But Dr. Reitman, you go by the name Hackie. Is it okay if I call you Hackie?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I'm just going to start by telling us, where are you coming to us from?
Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Fort Lauderdale, Florida. All right. So, Dr. Reitman, we were introduced to each other by a couple of colleagues that we have in common. Dr. Rick Rader, Dr. Who else? Who else was that? Steve Perlman, right? Yep. And a few other ones. And you have an amazing story. You have an amazing background. And I just want you to start with where you'd like to start and tell us about who you are and what you do and how you were led to work in this field for people with neurodiversity.
All right, but I'm warning you, I tend to talk too much, so cut me
Okay,
off.
I'll stop you if it gets too long. Don't worry.
Actually, I was the youngest of four, and my folks had a gas station in Jersey City where my mother used to pump gas and my father was a mechanic. And we had
you didn't sound like you had a Florida accent, I just want to say. So.
Yeah, no, we had a great family physician, Dr. Hyman Aronoff, whose car I used to gas up and check his oil. And when he made house calls, and when I had a sore throat, he'd come with that black bag to your house, and he made you feel good. And I said, I want to make people feel good like that. So I started writing away to the AMA, when I was a little kid, and said, look, I want to become a doctor, but I'm in a rush. I don't want to have to go to high school and everything. How do you do it? And we started a correspondence, and they said there's these advanced programs, 6-year medical programs where you, instead of going to college for 4 years and all that, you go right out of high school into a 6-year program. So I started writing away to the 6-year programs. There was just about 3 of them. And I wanted Boston University because they were the only one that stressed liberal arts. And I had no idea what liberal arts was, but it sounded like you could pick up girls. By this, I was like a junior in high school, So I go up there to interview, and I told them this story. And fortunately for me, they counted a lot for motivation. And the fellow who interviewed me, though, you've met these kind of people, I'm sure, in Louisiana who kind of wish they were at Harvard and they're not. And he had kind of a chip on his shoulder.
Gotcha.
Because he was at Boston University. And he said, you're never going to get accepted to this program. And I said, why? I'm motivated. I got good grades. I said, well, your SATs, you'd have to bring them up 150 points, and you can't do that. And, nice to know you. So I call up my friends. I said, we got to study for these SATs. I got to bring them up. And I brought them up over 200 points.
Wow.
Learning all these words that to this day I have never seen except they were on the SATs. Limn, L-I-M-N, means to portray. I still remember these.
Well, I was about to say, it's impressive that you remember that. I can't remember what I had for breakfast this morning. So
So I brought up my boards, my SATs, 200 points. And I called this fellow up who interviewed me and he said, who's this? I said, Hackie Reitman. Well, who are you? I said, you interviewed me. He said, I had to bring up my boards, 150 points. He said, yeah, so what? I said, well, I brought him up 200. Now, if you don't take me in the program, you got a problem. And I hung up on him. But they were real good at BU, and I was not as well qualified as many of the 6-year medical students who had advanced courses in chemistry and biology and everything. But I got into the program, and then I learned the dirty little secret that they threw out half of you. by a very clever mechanism. All you needed was a B-minus average in the sciences to stay in. Well, I got back my first test, thermodynamics and physical chemistry, and there's other stuff I couldn't even pronounce, and I got a 28, which was good enough for a median grade, which was a C+. They scaled everything.
Wow.
So half of the class was always in trouble. And they did end up throwing out half of us in those days, and I was lucky enough to make it. But then how I got into orthopedic surgery was I was president of the Boston Student Neurological Society with Harvard, Tufts, and BU, and I was going to be a pediatric neurologist. And this is like my first year of medical school. And I had just won the Golden Gloves there, so I was I got a lot of media attention.
Yeah, we're going to get to that in a second. You did say Golden Gloves, didn't you?
Yeah, that was.
Save that for later, but
yeah, and that was long before I went pro boxing. But anyway, so I had a little bit of notoriety there, and we're making rounds with the pediatric neurologist. We see this fascinating child, had everything wrong with him. And I said, I blurt out in my unsophisticated way, how are we going to fix him? And everybody started laughing at me, you know, the residents and other people are a lot older than me.
Mm-hmm.
He said, you can't fix, there's nothing you can do. You can't fix this individual. If you want to fix things, why don't you go into orthopedics? And I said, check, please. I ended up going into orthopedics, which I loved because I wanted to make people better. And it's surprising, as you know, as a doctor, there's a lot of things you can't help people with. And I didn't have the capacity emotionally for that. I wanted to be able to take care of everything. And orthopedics, for a simple-minded guy like me, that was a good thing. So I loved orthopedics, and it was great.
You know, I get what you're saying very much, and that mindset I've seen. You know, and you know, we know lots of people, especially when we're in residency, that are physicians, and there are people that do like to fix something, and I always found myself being one of those that like to do what I can to make something as good as it could be. And that the process of that was something that I enjoyed. It's like, hey, what can we do to make this situation a little better, as good as it can be, and how can we maintain it and help that person, you know, live the way that they live the best way that they can with what they have. And that's kind of where that was my mindset, which is, you know, to be honest, I was going to go into ophthalmology. I thought I was, and then I realized very quickly that was not for me. And I fell into the family medicine. Actually, then I was going to go into OB, which I really realized wasn't for me a little bit later. But I found my home in the family medicine world.
Oh, that's great. It's great when you find your niche. It really is. It really
so you mentioned, so you went on to be an orthopedic surgeon, right? Mm-hmm. But let's go back a second. What's this Golden Glove stuff?
Well, I was very jealous of my best friends from Jersey City I grew up with, who I'm still best friends with, because they became All-American football players and won national championships and did all this stuff. And all I could do was make 10th man on the Boston University basketball team, a 5'10" Jewish power forward, every coach's dream. You know? So I was very jealous because really, like, one of my friends, Richie Glover, was the Outland Trophy winner and national champion in Nebraska. Paul Caliades was with Columbia when they had their only winning seasons in their history. And they were in the papers and on TV all the time. And I was jealous. So they said, why don't you fight? You know how to box. You learned how to box up at the Y. Why don't you? So I went in the Golden Gloves as a lark without really training much. And the powers that be up in Lowell, Mass., that's where that movie The Fighter was made with Mark Wahlberg. That is a big fight town. And the Golden Gloves were really, really, really big in those days. And, you know, amateur, but very, very big. And the winners, would go places and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the people who make the seeds figured, look, we got this little undersized heavyweight, because for a heavyweight, I was very undersized. I'm only 5'10", and I was about 209 pounds. So they put me in with the hometown favorite, whose brother was a catcher for the Boston Red Sox. And he was a big 6'3" blonde Adonis who was knocking out everybody. And they figured I'd get knocked out and, put in this little Jewish guy and let him get knocked out. So I knocked him out in the first round.
Wow.
And pulled. And the media went crazy. Back then we didn't use headgear. It was like a big deal. All the TV went crazy, and it was like a medical student, and he can hit so hard. He's going to be the next Marciano, and he's a small heavyweight. And I kept knocking people out, getting more and more publicity, and ultimately I won the whole thing.
Wow.
And then the boxing promoter up there, legendary cartoon character, Sam Silverman was the pro boxing guy, was like a cartoon character crook who could get hit. But he was like, and he brought up these wise guys from New York, and they put $100,000 in a brown paper bag at the Athens Olympia restaurant in Boston.
Wow.
And I'm hustling 6 jobs to get through medical school. I'm drawing blood at 4:30 in the morning to get free meals at Boston City Hospital. Having a great time. Don't get me wrong. Playing rugby, boxing, doing everything. And this is 1971 when $1 was $1. And I look at this and I got really scared. I started to fear for my life because they weren't fooling around.
Mm-hmm.
I look in the bag and I said, that's a lot of money. They say, well, yeah, you take it. And I said, well, I only got 2 questions. They said, what? I said, well, if I take this money, which is a lot of money, you guys own me, right? And they look at each other and they said, they told me their silk ties, and they said, yeah, by owning it just means every purse you make, and you're going to make millions, all you got to do is fight the same kind of guys you've been knocking out, and you get so much publicity that you'll get 35% of it, and we'll get the rest, and you'll make a ton of money. So it's a lot of money. This is a. I said, all right, I understand. Are you going to be mad at me if I don't take it? They looked at each other and they said, if we catch you boxing for anybody else, we will. I said, oh, no. I was like the guy in The Godfather who ran out the door. Oh, look at what time it is. I got to study. I don't have time to box. So I had a 17-year layoff after that from boxing.
Wow.
And then as an orthopedic surgeon down here at the tender age of 38.
Now, were you in Florida at that time?
Yes, I was in Florida. I was in practice, and I was very young because I did the 6-year medical program, and I started my residency early. So I'm like very young, and I'm down here practicing since I'm 28. Now I'm about 38, and I was still hanging around the gyms, going down to Fifth Street Gym with Angelo Dundee and Muhammad Ali and stuff, and just getting in the ring, moving around a little bit. And my daughter, Rebecca, who is now transgender, so it's my son, Asa, has 23 brain tumors, has 2 major brain surgeries at Mayo Clinic, wasn't supposed to live through them, had kind of experimental surgery, and lives through it and does good. And when I was in the waiting room at the Mayo Clinic, as parents know, when your kid's sick, you make all kinds of promises to God.
Sure. And
I promise God, if you just let her do good, I'll find the biggest, toughest guys and I'll fight them. And I'm sitting next to this half a wise guy from Chicago whose kid is on the operating table with the same thing. And he goes, good, I know a boxing promoter in Chicago. Shake. we'll fight after we get the kids better. And we did, and I had a fight in Chicago, and I raised $10,000 for the St. Jude's Hospital. But that was just an amateur fight. His kid's kid brother went on to become Tommy Zibikowski, who played in the NFL for 5 years. And when he had his first pro fight, Angelo Dundee and I worked his corner. But I'm digressing.
Wow.
To do.
Friends for Life Residential Care, specializing in support for individuals with developmental disabilities, offers services like adult day support and home health care. Emphasizing empowerment and quality of life, we live by the motto, "My ability is stronger than my disability." We are currently hiring, welcoming those passionate about making a difference. Learn more and explore career opportunities at friendsforliferc.com.
I'm Dr. Craig Escude, President of Intellectability. State developmental disability agencies, managed care organizations, and providers across the United States use Intellectability's health risk screening tool, e-learn courses, and person-centered training to improve health equity for people with IDD. Visit replacingrisks.com to learn more about how you can employ these tools with people you support. Well, I'm fascinating. I mean, fascinating. I want to bring this to where you are and how this ties to the field of neurodiversity and people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And can you bring us to we got the beginnings of it, but tell us more about Different Minds and what that's all about.
Rebecca, now known as Asa, who's now 40 years old, in addition to all the brain lesions, was diagnosed with autism, which me, as an MD, Boston trained, had never heard of. As you said, it wasn't in any curriculum, never heard of neurodiversity, never heard of autism. And I said to myself, if I don't know anything about this, there's a lot of people who don't know about this.
Yes.
So this was many years ago. So I started writing a book just based on what I was going through, learning about all of this and meeting guys like Steve Perlman and Rick Rader and the AADMD and seeing this stuff unfolded. And I wrote the book Asper Tools, The Practical Guide to Understanding and Embracing Asperger's, Autism, and Neurodiversity. And the publisher, HCI Books, who did Chicken Soup for the Soul, said, you got to drop that word neurodiversity. Nobody knows what it means. And I said, no, I can't, because when I was learning about autism, it's not just autism. There's ADHD, there's mental health issues, and they're all related, and I see them all connecting and everything.
Right.
And so then I saw there weren't a lot of organizations that brought everything under one roof. You know, autism was over here, Alzheimer's was over there, ADHD was over there. And I said, wait a minute, we got to have, they're all just different brains. So I started differentbrains.org, a not-for-profit, to bring everything under one roof and to start putting in media form and multimedia, whether it's video, audio, like what you're doing. I said, let me get the guys who know about autism and let me get them talking to the people who know about Alzheimer's. And let's bring in the people on suicide. And you fast forward to now, years later, we've done about 280 interviews. We've become the leading producer of neurodiversity advocacy multimedia. Wow. I get to meet wonderful people like you and learn about your organizations and things that you do. And I'm able to get people to help each other out. And what I really want is I just want inclusion and acceptance. That, yeah, so his brain's a little bit different. He's a hell of a lot smarter than me. Work with the people's strengths, not their weaknesses.
That's so profound, so simple, but so profound. And that's something that I don't think we do very much. And I almost think we've gotten worse at over time. We tend to look at people's difficulties, their negatives, their challenges, and highlight those, unfortunately, instead of looking at the positive and working with the positive aspects. Because let's face it, we all have things we don't do well. We all have traits that aren't the best. But we also all have really good traits, and it's so important to really value every human being, because I could talk about that for a year, but when we don't value other people, we don't care, and we're not going to put forth effort and energy, especially in the healthcare world. If we don't value people that are neurodiverse, we don't see them as valuable members of society, we're not going to put forth the energy to provide good healthcare for them. And that is one of the first steps, is valuing everyone for who they are, regardless of their level of ability. That's the way I see it.
Very well said, and I agree 100%. Thank God there's champions like you and Rick Rader and Steve Perlman who put up or shut up on this and make it happen.
Well, it's an honor to be included in that group, I have to say, for you to say that. It's very humbling. So Hackie, tell me more about Different Brains and what resources it offers and how people can find out about it and all of that.
All people have to do is go to our website, differentbrains.org, the plural of different brains. And we have there so many resources and so many things. And send me an email, contact me through that. We are very proud of our mentorship programs, which we do both in the office here in Fort Lauderdale. And thanks to our friends at COVID, and virtual like this becoming a reality, we now have interns in India, Texas, California, all over. And so distance is no problem.
So when you say interns or mentorship, what is that program like?
Well, here's what the program is. It's I'll explain it in Hackie terms.
Okay.
We are not one size fits all. So when I have a parent or an individual, we start at age 18 because I noticed with so many things, it was all about the cute little kids and the cute little kids. Well, the cute little kids grow up and they need a job and they need to go to school. So we start at 18 and go upward from there. And what we do is they say, well, what are the hours? What do you want them to be? What are you doing? Well, I'm going to school, so it's going to fit around your school schedule. Or I have a job. And we have interns, when I call them interns or mentees, whatever you want to call them, team members, all over the map. I mean, as far as what they're doing, going to grad, we have a couple in med school, a couple in law school. So their brains are a little bit different. I loved what one of my heroes, Temple Grandin, said when we were holding both our books together, and the name of her book is Different, Not Less, which
it's great.
And these people, any individual, if you look hard enough, you'll find something really strong. And if you can harness that, I'm not saying to ignore the things that they're not good at, but I'm talking about to harness what's really their special gift, all right, which many of us have, okay? And we're not like everybody else. When I say we, I just think because everybody's brain is a little bit different. Look, I got expelled in the 1st grade and the 10th grade, okay? So, I have an authority.
Well, at least they let you back in after the 1st grade, right?
Well, I had to go to different schools. I bounced around a little bit. But, you got to do, and I encourage people that our system does not encourage you to find what you really love doing. That's what we do here. We'll try out at writing. We'll try out at being behind the camera, in front of a camera. Some of our interns and mentees have their own podcast shows,
So this is a mentor program for people with neurodiversity.
Yes.
To help foster them to find their place and their spot where they can shine in life. Is that a decent summary? Gotcha.
Absolutely. To achieve their goals, whatever they may be. Take a shot, get in there and don't just sit at home on your computer. Get in, meet people, expand your boundaries. And as you know very well, those of us who are on the spectrum, we're not too big on socialization is a big, big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And just getting people in the office for a meeting, or you start with a Zoom call where everyone's together, then you get them together. And they're great. And they're all over the map. I mean, all different kind of labels. They're all different diagnoses. But the one thing they have in common is they want to give it a shot.
And so if people are interested in the program, either learning more about it or to participate, they would go to differentbrains.org and they can find out what they need to know from there. Is that right?
Absolutely. And I look forward to getting an email from them. And we're also glad to hook them up with other organizations and other people. And it's amazing that when you try to help somebody achieve what they want to do, whether it's to get into a school or to learn how to read or to, it doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter where you are when you start. The important thing is to try to do what you want to do. And don't buy society's big lie that hard work and having a good time are mutually exclusive, because they're not. Some of the best times I've had are at work, and whether it be in an operating room or whether it be writing or whether it be mentoring, they're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
And so go for it, do it. And don't let anyone tell you can't do it. Don't let people, for some reason, even people who love you, they want to discourage you. You can't do that. You can't be a doctor and a boxer, or you can't be a lawyer and a doctor, and you can't. Yes, you can. If you want to work at it, you want to do it, go ahead and do it. Do what you want to do. Doesn't mean you're going to succeed at everything, but you give it your best shot. And usually when you try as hard as you can and you look for support and you're a nice person, you can make it. You can get it. Feel strongly about that.
So, Hackie, you've already given us some great tips and some great words of wisdom. But one of the ways that I always end each show is I ask people to give me, I call it 3 in 3 things in 3 minutes. Just 3 little tidbits, 3 little words of wisdom, 3 little pieces of advice that you think can improve the world for people with neurodiverse conditions.
Well, one thing I would say is aim high. Aim high for what you really want to do. Doesn't mean you're going to necessarily get there, but when you aim real high, even if you don't make it there, where you land is pretty good. Number 2 is work real hard. Hard work. I was one of the hardest workers. I wasn't the smartest, but I worked really, really hard. And the other thing is that something that one of my heroes who I got to meet when I was 21 years old out in Las Vegas, many in your audience are too young to have even heard of this man, one of the greatest heavyweight champions of all time, Joe Louis, who fought during World War II. And
heard of him.
Joe Louis. And I still have his autograph somewhere here, but I was 21 years old, and because my Uncle Mo worked at Caesar's Palace, I got to hang around with Joe Louis and walking around, having won the Golden Glove with Joe Louis, and who's better than me. You know? And I said, Joe, I got a confession to make. And he said, what? What, Doc? He said, you know, before every fight, and this was before I had my 26 pro heavyweight fights too, but it was true then. And I had just won the Golden Gloves. I said, you know, before every fight, every time I get in the ring, I get really scared. And I want to chicken out. And I'm like a big chicken, you know, and then I get in the ring and I do what I got to do, but I'm so scared and so afraid. And here, this is a guy who fought Max Schmeling, you know, the World War II. Here's a guy, been through so much. He puts his arm around me and he says, Doc, we all take fear into the ring with us. It's what you do with it that makes you a champion. And I tear up whenever I tell that, because that's what I want to tell your audience. That's what I want to tell anybody, whether they're a parent, whether they're a kid, whether their brain's a little different, whether they walk a little bit different than other people, whatever it is, go for it.
We all go into things with some fear, but it's what we do with it.
Yeah, so don't feel like the Lone Ranger. We all experience fear. It's what you do with it that's going to make you a champion, like a Rick Rader and like a Steve Perlman and like you.
Well, you're way overstepping now. That's way too much. But what a great sentiment to end on. And Hackie, your story is incredible. You've touched so many lives. You're continuing to touch so many lives in the work that you do. And I want to thank you for taking the time to talk with me today, but more importantly, for the incredible work that you're doing in this field.
Well, you're way too kind, but I thank you very much. I salute you for all the work you're doing, and the AADMD and Steve Perlman and Rick Rader and all those fine people who are doing so much. And we encourage everybody to visit us at differentbrains.org and send us an email, get in touch. We're glad to help anybody achieve their goals. That's what we're here for. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you.